I'm pretty sure, doesn't Crash Bandicoot actually have a brother named Crunch?
Wait.
Crunch Bandicoot?
I want to say he does. And
Crunch Bandicoot.
Crunch
Yeah,
Bandicoot.
Wait, this is a thing.
Munch Bandicoot.
It's Crunch Bandicoot. Crunch Bandicoot's a real...
Yep, Crunch
He's a real
Bandicoot's a real
fucking
thing.
Wow.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Everything in Poderation, because sometimes the internet can be too much. I am Robert, and I am the best game of the year.
You're something, certainly. I'm Daly, and I'm a street kid. Don't mess with me.
I thought there was gonna be any ellipses there. I was just waiting.
I was saying I was saying
more?
it the way that street kids say it, right? I'm cool
guess.
that way.
Yeah,
You guys just aren't in it.
I'm Colin Sparling, and I am crunchier than a Nestle Crunch bar. Yeah.
You could call him Captain Crunch, some might say. Like the cereal. Get
That's
it?
a street kid name.
Listen, all I'm saying is Robert. The only reason Robert's saying he's the game of the year is because he played himself. All right,
I did.
Oh.
I'm
You
always
played
playing
yourself.
myself. Always.
Congratulations. You played
Thank you.
yourself.
Yeah.
Off the top, of course, Happy New Year to everyone out there. It is New Year's Eve if you're listening to this, and if you are listening to this on New Year's Eve, I would say, what are you doing? But you shouldn't be outside anyway. So we hope you enjoy this Auld Lang Syne filled New Year's Eve special. We're going to talk about something really sad. Crunch.
In any other year, would you be sitting alone in your room listening to podcasts on New Year's Eve? Is this year
yes.
like the exception?
Yes. Yeah.
Because then it sounds like there's actually people with me.
Yeah, don't make
As opposed to being
Don't
alone.
make fun of us, Colin. Just because you have friends and can go out on New Year's.
Can't relate, dude.
Dude, I'll probably be listening to my PlayStation podcast or the fucking, I don't know, maybe Joe Rogan or something on New Year's Eve, like every other sad
Damn it.
sap.
Now Joe Rogan owes us money because we shilled his podcast. Dude, we were so kind to lift up his name.
You listen, you can't be sanctioned a podcast unless you evoke the name Joe Rogan on your podcast at some point.
What's this dark ritual?
So this is going to be a very video game focused episode because this has been a very interesting year for video games. There's been a lot of controversies, like The Last of Us Part 2 and just kind of everything related to that, which we did an episode on what feels like a few years back, but I promise you it was just weeks. It was only a few weeks ago we did it.
What?
I know. But today we're going to talk about crunch because this year has been an interesting story where one game, The Last of Us 2, was crunched super duper hard, super fucking hard, horribly so, but it swept the Game Awards. The critical consensus among game critics and fans is that it was a good enough game for us to give it a fake award that, I guess matters. And then on the other hand, we had Cyberpunk 2077, which just came out a few weeks ago, and it was crunched also super hard, even though CDPR said we're never going to crunch.
We're not going to do that.
Yeah, more on that later. But they crunched hard as well, and we got a buggy mess on launch.
Oh.
So The Last of Us Part 2, I think that it has stirred up a lot of conversation about crunch specifically because it also won not only Game of the Year, which I think we all kind of expected to happen, but Best Game Direction, which is an inherent award to the way that production was managed, and production was managed with a whole lot of crunch. So it seems to be an almost implicit endorsement of crunch, which is the best.
So I just wanted to make sure we're clear on that too. So like according to the Game Awards, the Game Award for the best direction is given for, quote, outstanding creative vision and innovation in game direction and design. So it's left pretty vague. It doesn't necessarily rest on the whole, like, this has to do directly with how a game development is managed.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that means like we're kind of stretching the definition a little bit, because I know there was that Kotaku article about how, like, you know, games made under crunch don't necessarily deserve awards like this. And I understand where they're coming from, but like I don't know if this is because they're actually stretching this definition a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I mean, because here's the thing, right? With the Game Awards, it's not like the what's the one for the movies? The Grammys? The Tonys.
Yeah,
No.
the Tonys, you got it.
Yeah, of course.
The Dundies.
Yeah, the Dundies. Thank you. No, like the Oscars, right? It's not like there is Best Picture, but there's also like Best Main Actor in a movie and Best Main Actress, Best Director, Best Cinematographer, or Director of Photography, right? Like that sort of stuff. Like we highlight individuals in the movie industry, but in the games industry, there isn't really like a Best Project Manager award, right? And if there were, Naughty Dog should not ever be on it. Is the vibe I'm getting from it, right?
Well, if you want to be specific about it, they shouldn't, because they don't have project managers at Naughty Dog.
That's the point.
Everyone's their own manager or producer is what I believe the quote was.
Mm-hmm.
That's the culture there.
Yeah.
But let's zoom out a bit here, in case, I don't know, if you the audience have been sleeping on the games industry for a while, or perhaps if you're the kind of person who thinks there shouldn't be politics in my games and doesn't want to talk about the business behind how games are made. I mean, you're probably not listening to our show anyway.
Yeah.
But crunch is such an anomaly, I think, in the games industry, in that most other industries aren't known or aren't defined by their crunch. Whereas the games industry, it's kind of in the same breadth if you're talking about it from a business perspective, right? Like you don't hear too much about like fast food. If you're working the register at a fast food joint, like it sucks because it sucks. It doesn't suck because you're being overworked and no one knows how to manage you and you're working 60 hours a week, that kind of stuff, right? It's a job.
Well, I mean, the crunch isn't only in the games industry. The crunch is everywhere in any sort of industry to a degree. But crunch is synonymous with the games industry. When they get down to the wire, to the end, to the point where they're getting ready to wrap up production, but they need to hit a deadline, usually there's a period where everyone on the team is working extra hours, sometimes dozens of extra hours on a weekly basis, double shifts, what have you, to make sure that their part of the game gets finished by that deadline, and they can hit it, and the game comes out, and woohoo, it sold a lot of it and made a lot of money, and blah blah blah. So yeah, I mean that's basically what crunch is in the industry, and it's been happening for decades at this point. And every so often it like goes away for a little bit, and then it comes back out after, like, usually it has to do with like a big AAA project. But yeah, it's never gone away. It's maybe been alleviated to a degree, maybe not as quite widespread. I think there's been efforts to combat against it, but for the most part, it's very real, and it's probably going to be a long time before it stops being a thing.
Something that always struck me before there was more like prolific interviews with people from studios that had been crunching really hard on these big AAA games like Red Dead Redemption 2, like The Last of Us Part 2. Previously, I think there was the idea that crunch was like, it's just something that's going to happen at like the tail end of a game's production, and we're just going to get as many bug fixes as we can get in possible, and it's going to be tough for like maybe 6 months. When in actuality, we find out that sometimes studios will crunch, like this year is going to be a crunch year, next year's we're going to take it a little easier, next year after that's another crunch year. Years crunching, months and months and months of like this life interrupting work. You can't do other things while that's going on. And that's not to say that that doesn't happen in other industries, but to have that expectation, like I might have to put everything else in my life on hold for a year because of my work.
And yeah, I think it's fair to point out too, right, that crunch affects the different parts of any studio differently, right? Marketing is going to crunch differently or at different times than, say, developers or, you know, other folk. I don't really know. I don't know how a game studio works, whatever. But, you know, the QA testers, the proletariat.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's
the artists, the coders, the combat programmers. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's going to affect each department differently, right? But nonetheless, it's still going to be a widespread enough problem where you can say that studio is crunching. For example, Naughty Dog. Naughty Dog is a studio that crunched really hard to give us The Last of Us Part 2, the Abby and Ellie experience.
Can that just be the extended title from now on?
Yeah, totally. So when we look at The Last of Us Part 2, you know, if we disregard all of the really shitty discourse surrounding the game about its narrative and the way it handles some of its characters and how Joel goes to play golf for a while, if we disregard all of that, right, I think it's fair to say that it is a competently made game. Like, you play it and the way you experience it, you feel like this is the way the directors and producers at Naughty Dog intended for me to experience it. I didn't run into many bugs. There wasn't any weird, like, what's that texture? What's that glitch? Right? It ran pretty smoothly. How about with you two?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I mean,
definitely.
It was a damn polished experience.
It's like, damn, look at all these textures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the Naughty Dog puts out a level of quality and polish that I think the only other equal is really Nintendo. Like you don't really get jank in a Mario game or a Zelda game. It just kind of works, you know?
Mm-hmm. It tries to exceed your expectations.
Right. And so Naughty Dog is definitely up there near, or if not in that echelon, along with, I'm sure, some others that I'm forgetting.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at Naughty Dog's, you know, catalog, right? Like, I can't think of an Uncharted game that launched and everyone was like, this is a buggy mess.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, any of the criticisms levied at Naughty Dog games were about the way its systems were executed or the story, right? Or the graphics, not because of graphical bugs, but just, you know, I might not have liked the way that looked, right? None of the criticisms about Naughty Dog games are rooted in because it's an unfinished product.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, because it's unfinished, because it's ugly, because there's, you know, it doesn't run well. None of that is ever a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the reason it's a finished product is because the developers worked their asses off and never met their families again.
Ever. What was the quote? It was someone specific. It was like, great place to work at, but you'll never go home.
The doghouse is your home.
Yeah, so Naughty Dog is definitely, like, there have been reports of crunch happening for months on end, even as far back as the middle of last year, that being 2019. And people reporting working 60, 70, 80 hours. I've saw some, like, single-handed, like, anonymous reports where, like, a couple of different individuals gave different perspectives where, like, yeah, like, you're expected to crunch, and upper management, if they don't see you, you know, putting hard work in, then you're fired. Other people are different. Some people are say, like, you know, I leave at 5 every day and, like, I don't feel bad about it, and it whatever, they just go about their day. And so, like, I've noticed that the experience varies pretty heavily, but there are consistently reports that crunch is happening. And it's definitely the sort of crunch where it's like you get the eyes across the room, sort of like if you're leaving at 5 sort of thing. It's not so much explicitly like, hey guys, we need to be working 100 hours this week, and if you don't adhere to that, you're fired. It's more so like, oh, other people in my team or my department, they're staying until 7-8 o'clock every day. I would look like an ass if I didn't, you know what I'm saying? So and that's to circle back to what we're talking about earlier. Naughty Dog doesn't have producers. So there's not one necessarily breathing down your neck and keeping you within budget and on time either. So that presents its own issues, which is probably a good reason or a good cause of a lot of this crunch that they're experiencing, because they don't have a lot of time management happening.
Right. And what's so tricky about planning, I mean, really any project, right? Not just games, but any, is your scope, right? Like, you can set out, and like if you wrote the script for The Last of Us 2, it'd probably be like a couple thousand pages in paper, but then you have that plan and it's set and like, okay, I know how the story is going to go. But then you develop the first level and then you realize, oh, wait, that's like a fun thing we can implement throughout the story. Or maybe you figure out an interesting thing with your gun mechanics and you're like, oh, maybe we can like gamify that a bit more. Maybe like there are weapon mods in the game and now there's crafting involved because we got to make the mods fun somehow. We got to give people a reason to mash triangle everywhere, right? Like it's all feature creep, where eventually the things that they didn't plan for from the beginning are suddenly thought of as these new game-defining moments throughout the story.
Yeah.
And then you're still like, but we still got to hit that deadline of, what was the initial release date? Like February 2020, right?
Man.
Yes.
Yeah. And then they realize like, oh, wait, we didn't factor in for like the fact that we had to develop all the other things and QA test them and etc. Right?
You're wind up putting out a lot of fires. It's like we're working on the new thing, but the actual work that you had originally expected to do is still there waiting for you.
Yeah. And from what I was reading about the way Naughty Dog works too, so from like the outset of a project, the interesting thing about Naughty Dog is that right from the outset, it's writers and developers working right alongside each other. Whereas in most other development studios, it's like you're creating the game first, right? The gameplay, and you come up with like a gameplay loop, and then you're kind of writing around that and then building from there later on. So Naughty Dog keeps a full staff of writers on the entire development process of a game, pre-pro into production and then post-pro. And so that runs into the issue of now you're playing a game of studio-wide ping pong where everyone is like hitting the ball back and forth constantly and shit over here is changing. And there's like 5 games going on all at once because here in the department, since we don't have a producer, these 2 writers are going back and forth. These two programmers are going back and forth about the source code, and these 2 art directors are going back and forth about the concept art or the assets that they're making. And so next thing you know, you have all of this shit happening and everyone may or may not tell everyone everything. Next thing you know, and this actually happened, they're set back 3 weeks. They just ate that 3 weeks worth of time. Yeah. So it's just, it sounds chaotic to me on paper, but they claim that it works.
No, it sounds like a nightmare. It sounds like
it just works.
Total nightmare.
No, it just works, guys.
Does it work though?
Does
it work? Because we keep saying, The Last of Us Part 2, this beautiful, wonderful, very, very polished game. And yes, I will put all those assurances. It is a beautiful and well-polished game. It's not a very beautiful and well-polished game. I'm very sorry to have discovered.
Ooh. Yeah.
Cyberpunk 2077 is not as shiny as I wanted it to be.
Man, 57 years in the making, and it's still not shiny, huh?
Still not shiny.
That game was announced
enough.
in 2012, y'all.
8 years. No, probably more than that, because there's no way they would announce something.
Many.
Oh, yeah.
Many years, and still crunch.
Wait, but Daily, I've been in a coma for 7 years, but the last thing I remember was CD Projekt Red saying they would never crunch.
Yeah. They said that, and then a company-wide email got leaked saying like, hey, we got a crunch. Make sure to come in at least one day on the weekend.
Oh.
Yeah. It's super unfortunate. It really sucks that they ended up having to crunch like they did. And the thing is, the ways that Cyberpunk came out, like, I don't obviously have any firsthand information as to like this being the reason why, but I would venture to guess that it wasn't the developers, like the engineers, the artists, the fucking writers. Like, I doubt it was their fault that shit happened the way it did. I almost guarantee it was a corporate publisher / like shareholder thing.
I was gonna ask, like, is it because of how shitty everyone's attitudes were toward delays.
It's got to play a hand.
I think that plays a hand. If I had to guess, part of what plays a hand too is, I mean, consider if they did meet their November 19th launch window, which, keep in mind, was their second and or third launch window. I forget how many delays there have been.
There's several this year. I think 5. Has it been 5?
It was initially April, and then September, and then November, and then December.
Yes.
Is that right?
Is that 5?
Yes.
That's 4.
4.
So November, like, imagine if it did come out in November, right?
Mm-hmm.
And remember, November, they were like, this is it, guys. No more delays. Swear to Cyber God. This is it. And
swear to Cyber God.
And that's 9 days after the PS5 came out. PS2 came out. Like, my brain's weird today. The PS5 came out.
PS Vita came out.
7 days ago. And the Xbox Series X came out 9 days ago. Like, what a great time.
Mm-hmm.
And right before the holidays, right before Christmas shopping. Oh, beautiful. But we have to delay. And they delayed it by a month, right? December 10th. And at that point, I'm willing to bet that's when the corporate and or business people in that company and around that company had to put their foot down and be like, we are not missing out on that holiday shopping spree.
No.
You better get that goddamn game out or else.
Yeah.
They
listen,
jacked them in like net runners. Everyone's consciousness in their PCs.
Yeah. I mean, listen, you guys, all of you out there, even if you're not a gamer, you don't have to look that hard at the PS4 and Xbox One versions of this game and be like, oof, like that's not good, you know? And so imagine the developers in that situation. You know what I'm saying? They're probably like approaching that the original November deadline. And they're like, listen, shareholder person, corporate people, we're working on like the Xbox and PS4 it's just not going to be ready. It's just not going to be good. And they're like, listen, best we can do is like December sometime, like early mid-December.
And even then, that's clearly not enough.
No,
right?
I guarantee it was like they asked for more time and they couldn't get it.
Like, I'm on PC and I've just kind of accepted that I'm going to hear like random screaming and see people T-posing in the background. Like, there's just certain parts of the game I can't rely on functioning at any one time. And I've accepted that. I'm playing it. Do I think that should have happened? No.
You mean you don't cry every time you think about the game and you look at your tower while it's off and just be like, oh, God, I'm so depressed.
Excuse me, my Cyberpunk machine. That's all it is now. It's just Cyberpunk.
There were those people, weren't there? Of people they were like, I've had my life on hold. I'm not going to live until I can be a cyberpunk.
The one true
my whole life is centered around this moment.
And you know, something I just thought of, could you fucking imagine being a QA person for Cyberpunk, specifically for Stadia? Could you fucking imagine that? Because here's the thing, I hear on Stadia it runs fairly well, right? Because I mean, it's Google's machines and they have state of the art whatever the fucks. So it's just about your internet connection at that point, right? So could you imagine being on the Stadia QA team for Cyberpunk and thinking, man, I probably should really be testing this on a last gen console, huh? Or it needs it.
Yeah, that's the thing, dude, is the QA team. I feel so terrible for the QA team because they're going to get lambasted. But the fact of the matter is, if you're on the QA team, you're like the guy up in like the crow's nest on the Titanic with the binoculars, and you're like, you see the fucking iceberg.
You see coming.
The iceberg. And you run down to the captain, you're like, hey, like, captain guy, like, there's an iceberg.
Captain Crunch, there's an iceberg.
Yeah. Captain Crunch, we should probably like steer the ship maybe a little bit to the left so we don't hit this iceberg. And he's just got like earmuffs on. Like, what? I'm sorry, la, I can't hear you. This is the course we set, guys. We can't.
And the earmuffs are made of just straight up dollars. Just $100 bills just shoved into his ears.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. Cyberpunk is something that I am so continuously fascinated by. Not because the game is just okay, but the everything around it. Because it is legitimately the biggest game for the past decade, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it was the one thing everyone knew. Like I had coworkers at my day job that is nowhere near video game related who would ask me, hey, what's up with that Cyberpunk thing? Like people fucking know about Cyberpunk. It's the biggest deal on the planet, which is why I'm thinking, look, I get the whole Christmas rush. I know that's a big deal and whatever, but you could potentially have the next GTA 5 in your hands. People will buy it. If you release it, they will purchase.
Yep.
Doesn't matter when. You could release it like on a Monday morning at 8 a.m. any day of the week, really at 8 a.m.
Still gonna buy it.
Would buy it. People would buy the shit out of it.
Still gonna buy it.
That's what the shareholders were thinking. We can release it when it's not finished, guys, and people will still buy it. And guess what? 8 million copies in pre-orders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna say
8 million copies.
You already have it sitting on pre-order. I'm sure, there was data on how many people that have just been sitting on pre-order or relying to sit on pre-order since the thing was announced.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, even if they release the game in a broken state like it is now, they had those 8 million pre-orders, and they're even after the fact they're offering refunds now, but they made that money. That money's made, and they're going to continue to patch the game, and the game's going to sell more copies, especially after the game's polished.
Exactly. And that's what makes me so fucking angry about this, right? Is because that's what everyone's saying. I mean, it started off as, don't worry, the day one patch will fix it. It didn't. And then don't worry, they'll fix it eventually. I'm sure they will. But then is the story, oh, CDPR, they're so gracious. They fixed their shitty game that released on a broken state. Like, that shouldn't be the fucking story at all. The story should be they released a shit product because they knew you're a dumb goddamn idiot who will buy it because you believe the hype, and then maybe they'll fix it in the future. But they're not obligated to. They're just doing it so that way you'll buy The Witcher 4 in 5 years.
Because absolutely. And
that's
people are going to. People are going to. Because that's the thing is, it's so ironic too that CDPR has been termed as like more of a generous studio, like, Blood and Wine. That was huge. Here you go. We made more for you. You may have. And the other benefits that you have with their games, like, you want The Witcher 3 in HD, you got it. You don't have to pay again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, they do have a lot of practices that get them in the good graces of a lot of people in games, right? But to circle this back to Crunch, though, that's my point. Other than the shareholders trying to hit their numbers for this quarter and make those holiday sales, because it's probably going to be the hottest game of Christmas. It's the hottest game there is right now. It's all anyone's fucking talking about. Mm-hmm. There's legitimately no real good reason why they had to fucking crunch as hard as they did. You know what I'm saying? So, like, the only counter argument to that I could actually see, right, is to release the game now to, like, get some of their budget back, right? So they can keep shoveling in more money into keeping the game patched, right? Mm-hmm. To keep more money in the budget to continue to support the game. That's the only, like, legitimate counter argument.
Yeah, I guess I'm asking myself, like what would have been different? What would have been different if they had, delayed for however many more months that they needed? I have no idea what that might have been. It might have been, 2. It might have been 6 months. I feel like the worst thing that would have happened is that the subreddit would have just gotten more toxic, and that's about it.
God, that subreddit, what a piece of shit cesspool that place is.
I mean, you delay the game, they're going to be pissed. You put the game out and it's not finished.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
So that is what I think is so interesting about this whole crunch situation is that, yes, if you delay a game, people will hate you. If you release a buggy game, people will hate you. But at the end of the day, I think I sided with that Shigeru Miyamoto quote. What is that? Like, a bad game is forever bad. A delayed game's at least kind of good. Something like that.
Yeah.
So
if it's a phenomenal game as Cyberpunk has been purported to be, you're just going to forget about the delay associated with it and just be like, man, but it still holds up today or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And it makes me wonder, why do we have to get into that position where you're stuck between the rock and a hard place of delaying a game or releasing it buggy, right? Why not just not announce the release date until you're like pretty sure, hey, this is coming out and it's going to be good and it's going to be polished, right? Because then marketing is itself creating the deadlines. And that's probably not fair. I doubt it's marketing just deciding on a whim. Cyberpunk, April 19th. Done deal.
It's my birthday. I want it for my birthday.
Yeah, it's not marketing that decides this. It's definitely people above them. But when you have to market that message and you have this humongous hype push, like, don't worry, guys, Cyberpunk, the best game of the year, is going to be in your hands on April 19th. You're setting up the people for disappointment constantly.
Screwing over the people that you might not work directly with, but there's someone like, oh, did you see the release date is the 19th now? And it's just like, we're supposed to do what? When? What?
Mm-hmm. And then when you do that, it creates a system where they have to crunch. The developers, the coders, they have to crunch to meet this absurd deadline. You know, because at that point, it's the business setting the deadline and not project managers who can understand how long it would take something to come out.
So I really wonder how much it was Warner Brothers that played a hand in the whole release fiasco. You know, Warner Brothers being the people that published this game. Because to me, that's the only conceivable way, you know, it's the people given CD Projekt the budget that are calling the shots on this release. That's like the only reasonable explanation to me. Otherwise, CDPR would have went until it was done if they had the money, assuming.
Right.
I blame capitalism. Because that's what being a cyberpunk is all about.
Are you a cyber Marxist now?
Yes.
Hell yeah.
I've gone beyond.
Yeah, I've graduated from capitalism.
And to be fair, not to mince words either, like, to be fair, the game is done. Like, you can play it from start to finish. It's done. It's just not polished. It's just buggy. It's broken.
Mm-hmm.
T-posing. Yeah.
And not optimized.
Pants
on
not
consoles.
Happening.
All right. So we've talked about these two great, fantastic, wonderful games that have been crunched to hell to release, right? Both of them, let's recap a little bit. Both of them have been delayed. One of them delayed a few more times than the other. But when they released, they were expected to be the biggest hotness. One of them delivered in terms of polish and bug-free and a generally fine gameplay experience, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas the other has a lot of funny glitches. Very distracting funny glitches. It's kind of broken. And on top of that, it does not run arguably at all on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. That being Cyberpunk. That like, don't play it on PS4 or Xbox One. Just flat out don't, which sucks, but that's the where CDPR put us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
4 out of 10 IGN.
4 out of 10, yeah. But hey, guys, good thing that the PS5 and Xbox Series X are so easy to get a hold of. Oh
yeah.
Thank God everyone has.
Not going to be any problems with that. No.
Yeah, definitely not a luxury item.
Yeah. So something I wanted to throw to you guys here. Do you think crunch is justified? Like, does it inherently mean it's going to be a better game if we crunch?
No. No.
Bold statement.
I'll back it up with gestures at Cyberpunk 2077 and then turns to gesture instead at Supergiant's Hades, which I believe I have it here. They had a pretty generous scheduling system where it was like, okay, there are a minimum of 20 days off per year, unlimited time off, and no emails sent out after 5 p.m. on Fridays. Super.
That's so good.
So good. Very, very nice work environment, it sounds like. And that's a great game. That's a fantastic game. It's a beautiful game.
It.
Yeah, I wrote about the music for it like 2 weeks ago. It's so fucking good.
Shameless plug.
I know.
But it's facts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as I was saying before, the reason why games take so long, and the reason why people crunch, and the reason why people put so many fucking hours in is because of games that look the way that Last of Us Part 2 does. Because of games like Cyberpunk. Now, Hades is a great game, and I'm someone who believes that gameplay trumps everything else when it comes to video games. I think that's the most important thing, and Hades has that in spades. I love Hades to death. I love the art style, and I love that I know that their devs didn't have to really crunch. They worked with the generous schedule. However,
if you're about to say something bad about Hades, I'm going to kick your ass.
I'm not going to say anything bad about Hades, but the fact of the matter is, Hades is not a AAA game.
Mm.
It is an indie game, and so when you get into the indie game space, you have a lot more factors playing into it. You have a bigger team. You have a project of a much larger scale that requires many more artists, many more designers and writers, and a whole like crew of people to do mocap and do acting and voice acting. Like it's just a much bigger scaled production. And with that, you're going to have people that are working under strict schedules, usually like we've been talking about, imposed by higher ups. And it's naturally going to make them crunch when they're butting up against a headline, which sucks, which is awful. And you're also going to have to factor in those people that are willingly going to crunch, that are willingly going to put in 60 hours because maybe they're on a roll, or maybe they just don't care. That's like all they want to do, and that's their work ethic shining through.
Their passion.
Yeah, and those situations happen. And sometimes they can be not great for the rest of the team. Like, those people can make the other people feel like they need to work more, and that is negative. That part shouldn't happen. Even Neil Druckmann has said that, like, those people that want to keep working, we're not going to stop them from working. We're not going to guilt them into working, and we're not going to make those people stay after 5 o'clock either. So all of that happens crunch-wise is all like a peer sort of thing. Like I said, eyes dart across the room, who's leaving at what time, Right. And so that's, in a AAA environment, it's just set up more to have crunch situations be more likely. It's just the way it's structured.
For me, that seems to warrant then that there should be more systems put in place to avoid that, or there should be more wiggle room, because it's a big AAA studio that has a lot of experience with running games. It's like you can learn from the past and know that you're not going to make this mark or that mark. Or most of the games that we've talked about too, it kind of they're too big to fail almost, in a sense. Whereas I think, indie studios would have more of the worry that what if we put in all this crunch and it just fails anyway? It's not a guaranteed bestseller. Whereas something like CD Projekt Red or Naughty Dog, it's like, y'all are going to get paid either way.
Yeah, too big to fail sort of thing.
Right. And something I do want to say when it comes to money, specifically with crunch, because a big factor of crunch is we need to meet this deadline. Like, there is no time afterward, or we don't have enough money to pay for these people to work an extra 2 weeks on this project, right?
Yeah, that's where shit gets really hairy.
Well, that's where shit gets so fucking stupid, because Bobby Kotick walked home with, like, I don't know, $1 quadrillion last year. You know what I mean? Like, there's literally no excuse, especially if you're AAA, because the games industry as a whole walks away with so much fucking money. Do you know why most CEOs of most AAA companies aren't gamers? Because there's money, billions of money involved, right? Billions of
several money,
billions
at
of
least
money,
7.
Yeah. There's at least 7 billion money involved in the game industry. And
But what if I have no kids and 3 money?
Well, so that's why you see a lot of CEOs like Bobby Kotick. Look, I'm not going to make character judgments about him, but he's probably not a good person. But I doubt he's a big gamer. I've never seen him come out and even say, like, I like Mario. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't strike me as the kind of person who isn't in it for the games, but is in it for the money. So I don't want to fucking hear that there's no money for people to maybe spend a few extra weeks or months on that level or that game mechanic or that texture or that whatever, because there absolutely is. Right.
Yeah. And that's the scary part is especially if you're working all those hours, if you're not getting compensated, that's a real issue.
It's like, I signed on with the salaried position. No matter how much I work, I'm still going to get paid the same that they said I was going to at the beginning of the year.
Exactly. I signed on for a $60K salary, and next thing you know, you're working 60, 70 hours a week. And if you were getting paid $20, $25 an hour, you'd be making much more than 60K a year.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I think
Go ahead.
I think
Haley.
it's almost an irresponsible narrative to then be like, well, then that's their choice if they're working the 60, 70, and extra hours. They can go home anytime we want. It's on them. It's not on us producers. We don't have producers. Everyone's their own producer. When it's like you know what's going to happen though. You're not innocent in this. You're not naive enough to think that that's not going to be what happens, and it's on the company itself to create systems like maybe no emails sent off after 5 p.m. on Fridays to keep some of that work-life balance. I don't think that you can just shove that off onto the employees themselves.
Yeah, and it's one thing too, right? If you're staying an hour or two over because like it wasn't until after lunch that you got on a roll with that creative thing that you were working on or whatever.
No,
you are getting compensated hourly.
Mm-hmm.
Because and then you'll get time and a half. Like, good for you. You made some extra money that week. Bada bing, bada boom. But if you're someone who is, even if you're hourly, it's even worse though if you're salaried and you're working 60 hours a week and you're the one giving eyes to that person that's leaving at 5 o'clock every day who is also salaried, and you're making them feel bad for not working and not getting paid, then you're the worst kind of person.
Yeah, you should stop. Probably just stop.
That.
Yeah, you are the worst.
Yeah.
But to Daly's point though, you are right. There needs to be more systems in place to stop people from working too much over. Like, I think there's like some studios that hard stop 7 o'clock. You have to get the fuck out of the office. Like, no one's allowed to be in the office after 7 o'clock.
Yeah,
like,
we send in a man with a gun. You need to get
Oh my God.
You need to leave.
Leave. Yeah, and or shit like that, or like making sure that I've also seen cases where people do decline taking salaried positions, even though technically on paper it would pay them more. They instead stick with their hourly paying job because they would actually make more money doing that, what they already do. But then this gets into the whole conversation of, I think the games industry should unionize, even though that would be a very difficult thing to do. But I think that would be one of the biggest ways that we can actually get rid of crunch, like once and for all in the AAA space. I think unionization is that's just gonna have to happen.
Right.
Yep.
But
absolutely.
A curveball I do want to throw at you guys is, so like, yes, crunch bad, obviously. Right. The only time it's good is when it's on a cereal. But nonetheless, because I think it'd be a fair statement to say, because The Last of Us Part 2's development team crunched, it came out in a polished state. And the reason I feel a little confident in saying that is because when it went from a February release date to a May and then to a June, I'm pretty sure May was there. It might not have been. That might have been when we were getting news. I forget. But it eventually, it was pushed back 4 months, right? When it came out. That delay doesn't just happen because, we forgot about one or two things, especially when reports of crunch come out, right? Like, for sure, crunch is the reason they made it to the quote-unquote finish line of June 22nd, right? So did crunch succeed in that case? Did crunch make it a good game? And if so, what does that mean for the rest of the industry?
You want to take this one, Daly?
Why couldn't it have been? It could still have been a good game if it came out in June of next year. And
that's true.
People still could have, not seen their spouses for weeks at a time. And yeah, everyone's individual crunch is going to differ. But I think the final product is still going to be the final product. It just matters when.
Yeah, and unfortunately that's what shareholders care a lot about, is when we got to make a certain amount of money in our fiscal quarters and whatnot, especially since this was the twilight year for the PS4. They needed that big exclusive to make them a lot of money. That and Ghost of Tsushima.
Mm-hmm. Two big exclusives within a month of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, crunch didn't necessarily work for all those people either. I mean, lest we forget, Naughty Dog has a 70% turnover rate, and they rely mostly on contractors to do a lot of their work.
Yeah, which means a lot of the people who've worked on Last of Us 2 might not even have like that brand loyalty. Like, they're not even proud to be a Naughty Dog. I assume that's what they call it.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Naughty pooches.
Because, like, look, I've contracted and freelanced at a lot of places, and I'm happy to do work for those people, and I'm happy to continue to do work for those people in the future as well. But when you're a contractor or freelancer, there is this weird social barrier of like, oh, you're not like really an employee here. I mean, you work here, but
you're going to be gone
really
on
part of the team
X date, and even if you don't get extended or whatever.
Yeah, so it's hard to feel ownership over whatever creative you're working on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that could lead to less motivation necessarily, like, at some points, right? So I don't know, it's kind of hard to look at Naughty Dog and be like, if you have a 70% turnover rate, work with a lot of contractors, and then crack the whip and force them to work ludicrous hours to put out your zombie game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it seems a little bit mean. Just a little mean.
Yeah. In some cases, it's been well recorded that you can't rely on like, oh, well, but I'll still have my name in the credits and, I'll be compensated fairly, when we have situations like originally, if you hadn't stuck out the entire span of production for Red Dead Redemption 2, you weren't going to get your name in the credits. Like, you could have put in 4 years, but those 4 years you're just not going to get credited for. And it was only when there was a ruckus about it that they fixed that.
Well, and the ironic thing about that too is, like, Naughty Dog can easily get people in the door right now because they're Naughty Dog. Right? Like, people want to work at Naughty Dog because it's Naughty Dog, and guess what? When your contract's up, you have Naughty Dog on your resume now. And other employers are going to see that and be like, oh shit, he worked at Naughty Dog.
He did the Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah.
More like
he did the Crash Bandicoot Uncharted.
Bandicoot.
I get it. That's his secret third brother.
Yeah, but I think that's to demotivate that, because if someone gets in there and next thing you know they have to work 60-hour weeks and they're like, I can't handle this shit, then next thing you know their name's not in the credits, even though they went there to get their name, get the Naughty Dog name on their resume.
Okay, hold on, I have to Google this. I'm pretty sure, doesn't Crash Bandicoot actually have a brother named Crunch?
Wait.
Crunch Bandicoot?
I want to say he does. And
Crunch Bandicoot.
Crunch Bandicoot.
Wait, this is a thing.
Munch Bandicoot.
It's Crunch Bandicoot. Crunch Bandicoot's a real...
Yep, Crunch Bandicoot's a real thing.
Wow.
He's the buff boy.
Wow.
So it's been, since Naughty Dog started, Crunch has been part of their language.
It's been in the culture. Jeez.
Crunch Bandicoot.
Oh no. Okay, so boy. I guess everyone knows what they're getting into, obviously, because Naughty Dog, Crunch, Bandicoots, exactly. You know what you're getting into when you sign up there.
So, but then to flip it, right, to put it on the Cyberpunk table, right, they also crunched probably multiple times throughout the year because of the multiple delays, right, which shows a level of mismanagement in terms of not knowing the expectations of when this will be quote unquote ready for market. So what's the solution there? Is it just, if they crunched harder, it would have been a better game?
You should have just worked harder.
Yeah. Should have just worked 100 hours this week. What are you guys doing?
How shitty is that?
Yeah. I mean, just give them more time. They should have just been like, hey guys, it's a PS5 and Series X game now. Like, we're going to take a few more months, get that out for those consoles. Done. Yeah. It's still going to sell like fuck. It's still going to sell like crazy. Like,
I'm under the impression that there was a lot of, quote unquote, blunders or bad press that Cyberpunk could have withstood and still had a I'm still going to have played it. Most people are still going to have played it. I feel like they felt like they needed to play safer, that they only had so much social credit to fuck up before the gamers would turn against them. But now I guess, yeah, the gamers have turned against them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just honestly troll through r/cyberpunk game for a little bit.
God.
If you put on your hazmat suit first, your cyber hazmat suit.
Stay safe.
Yeah, because again, like that's a subreddit that should be dedicated to the celebration of everything good about Cyberpunk.
It was.
Those folks are trashing this game a lot.
Quite a bit.
Yeah. As an anecdote, remember Kingdom Hearts 3?
Unfortunately, you'll have to remind me about it though.
Yeah. You don't hear me say. That game, Kingdom Hearts 3, was in development for God knows how long. 14 years it took to come out after the release of Kingdom Hearts 2. I don't know how long they were actually developing the game, but I do know that Kingdom Hearts 3 was originally planned to be a PS3 game. That's how long it was in development, right?
Some would say the development wasn't quite simple and clean.
But obviously at some point down the line, they're like, this is either taking too long or the scale is too big. We want to do too much with it. We're going to make it into a PS4 game. And so that's what they did. People still had patience. People still waited. Granted, we were getting some ancillary fucking spin-off Kingdom Hearts games that were still important to play for some god-awful reason, but that's another podcast for another time. People waited. The game came out, and it still sold pretty damn well. And people waited all through that whole transition. They switched game engines and everything, remade the game from the ground up. And I don't know if those devs crunched, but they took plenty of time to make the game, and they still got it out. And it didn't, it wasn't delayed a million times, and it didn't come out all buggy and shit. So, I don't know.
I would say some food for thought for that point. This is half joke, but also, if you know, you're a real one if you know. If you bought Kingdom Hearts 3, you are a victim of Tetsuya Nomura. At that point, it's Stockholm Syndrome. You don't like it anymore, but you have to know.
I gotta know.
And that's probably why you bought Kingdom Hearts 3, no matter what it came out.
How good the game is another discussion.
Well, no, I think it's a fine game, but I feel like now, Kingdom Hearts 4, most people aren't really buying it anymore for it's like Disney, but not. People are buying it because I need to know what the Master of Masters is. I need to know what all these Keyblades are about, and the Kai Blade, and what happened to Sora at the end. That's the Kingdom Hearts train.
We got to see this
I'm in it
shitstorm
for
through.
Goofy.
Is basically what it comes down to.
Goofy does die in the second one.
Yuck.
Goofy.
Yeah, but jokes aside, yeah, you're right at that point that some people were still invested enough in Kingdom Hearts 3 to wait and wait and wait until they got the game, right? Until they got Kingdom Hearts 2.9 that turned into 3.
Right. Again, we did get 1,000,001 spinoffs, and that continued to show their shareholders that the Kingdom Hearts can still sell, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess that it's not a 1-to-1 comparison.
Right. And we also don't know offhand right now if the Kingdom Hearts 3 developers crunched, right?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of variable there.
Right. But with something like Cyberpunk, I'm willing to bet that if we had lived in an alternate timeline, which I would love, because really anything besides this 2020 timeline would have been great. But if we had all lived in an alternate timeline where it's initially, it's coming out in April, and then in February they said, hey guys, sorry, we're going to need a delay. We don't know when we're going to come out now, but it's something we have to do. It'll come out when it's ready. When it's ready, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we just waited. Summer 2021 or something.
We could have waited.
Could you imagine E3 2021? Let's assume, COVID's done and we actually have an in-person event, and either Microsoft or Sony's probably not going to be at E3, but Microsoft buys the rights to show off the launch trailer for Cyberpunk 2077. Keanu's back. He's still breathtaking, and the game's going to be in your hands August 2021, and it's polished. And the discussion doesn't have to be how many T-poses have you found, right? It's, is the story good? Is the story bad? What do you think of the gameplay? Do you like the guns? Do you hate the guns? We can talk about this stuff, because then it's a polished, finished product.
Yeah, people
that hopefully wasn't made by Crunch.
It would have served everyone better. It would have served the players. It would have served the developers much better if we could just be talking about the game purely on the merit of the gameplay and the story and the world that was built in Night City instead of, I haven't been able to run it. Have you been able to run it? I killed an NPC and they turned into a patio set.
Yeah. The game crashed on me twice last night.
Nice. It's crashed on me twice so far. One hard crash where my PC had to like reboot.
Yeah. But I don't know. I'm trying to say by the whole Kingdom Hearts 3 point is like gamers are willing to wait, man. Like we're like there's no need to make gamers crunch. So
what?
Patience over crunch.
Gamers, developers.
Patience over crunch. Make the gamers do it if they want it so
make
bad.
The gamers crunch. Give it to them.
Yeah, make the gamers crunch. Yeah, so I know we've hit on this already, but the only conceivable explanation is somebody needed to make money. All right.
Yeah.
Somebody needed the money.
Right. And I guess I want to close out this entire discussion just by saying, we aren't the be all end all. If we're for some reason the first time you've heard of crunch in the games industry, I do encourage you to look out there, read people's testimonials, read people's stories, right? But then also consider there are probably 1,000,001 factors that go into why a studio crunches toward that final deadline, right? Because shareholders are a big thing. When we're talking billions of dollars, those decisions are hopefully not made lightly unless they're an idiot like the 45th president of the United States, the orange one.
Yes, that one.
Yeah,
the Cheeto guy.
Cheeto man. So there's probably a lot of factors that go into crunch, but I think undeniably at its core, what you're still choosing is the chance to make more money over the happiness of a single human being, let alone a team of hundreds of human beings.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, y'all.
Which doesn't matter when you rely on contractors and humans are disposable. Woo!
Cyberpunk. Disposable humans.
The title screen just starts right then. This podcast has been just the prelude the entire time.
Yeah.
I talk about this shit, but then Naughty Dog gives me a job and I'm just like, well,
I love Naughty Dog now, guys.
Wow.
Crunch Bandicoot's my favorite Bandicoot.
Yes. I'll let you know how many Nestle Crunch bars they give me.
Nice. But yeah, that wraps us up. That's our last episode of the year, which is wild. 2020 is over.
Fucking riddance, 2020. Fuck you.
God.
Walking backwards into hell.
Yeah.
Flipping off 2020.
You know what my New Year's resolution is, guys?
Oh, are we doing this?
Yeah. Get people off this whole fucking Nestle Crunch train and onto the Hershey's Crackle train. Because it's so much better than Nestle. It tastes so much better. It's better chocolate.
Nestle's a bad company, y'all.
Mm-hmm. And also, Nestle takes just water and packages it and sells it.
They just take ultimate corpos.
Well, I mean, if you describe it like Aquafina does the same thing.
Yeah, but Nestle does it and it's just tap water.
Yeah.
Fuck bottled water.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all remember Fiji water?
Evil.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Fancy as bullshit.
Well, it's funny. They bragged about how their water's better than everyone else's. And then I think it was Cincinnati or some local city tested their tap water versus Fiji water and found more shit in Fiji water than the tap water. So get fucked, Fiji.
There's something in the water, y'all.
Same.
Yeah, but also Voss water is great. I'm not gonna lie. I really like Voss.
There you go. Yeah, it tastes just like water.
Yeah, it tastes just like The Rock because The Rock drinks Voss because he has a majority stake or some shit in that company. No, I don't know.
It's like his sweat.
Drink like The Rock.
Oh, that implies he drinks his own sweat. Gross. So that's the energy we're leaving this year with. We hope you enjoy your New Year's. It's definitely a weird one all around the world, except for the few places where you're actually COVID-free. Congratulations, Australia. Congratulations, New Zealand. You did it. You beat this stupid virus that America doesn't give a shit about for some stupid reason. But, if you found us this year, we only just started. This is like our 14th episode, right? We've only been doing this for a few months now. But if you found us this year and you've been enjoying what we do, really, we appreciate it. We thank you just for hearing what three people who think they're smart want to say on the internet.
Thanks, guys.
We're trying to tell you we're pseudo intellectuals.
As I sip my my cafe au lait in the cafe.
You podcast from a cafe.
Do you not? You fake intellectual?
I just hush everyone around me constantly.
Listen, I had people.
Shut up, guys. Shut up.
I'm podcasting.
I legitimately had a group of dudes come into the bar I worked at and podcasted at one of our tables when it was like busy.
I mean, to be fair, Colin, you and I have podcasted while you were driving a car for 2 hours.
Yeah, but a car isn't a fucking busy bar.
Yeah. It's just a loud engine on wheels.
Broadcast live from our minivan. This has been Everything in Poderation.
Yeah.
I think Steve-O does that, actually.
Well, there you go. But yeah, no, thank you so much for listening. And we hope that you stick around for 2021. Hopefully our content will be just as fun, engaging.
I'm loving this confidence right now.
Maybe. I don't know if I go that far. Yeah, that's probably that's a good base. Everything in Poderation, tolerable.
Yeah, very, very mediocre, very middling.
Yeah, they're so middle of the ground,
Yeah.
But thank you for listening. And hey, if you want to follow us on all of our socials and our YouTube, all that's down below. And leave us a comment. Let us know, what's your New Year resolution for 2021? Is it to crunch more? Because I hope it's not. But let us know. Comments below, email us. Isn't it everythinginpod@gmail.com? That's it. It's in our description. You can see it. You can read it.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. This has been Everything in Poderation. Thank you,
Bye.
everybody. Love you. Less crunch, more crackle.